Well, thank you all for having me. I have been here many times as a club member, and it's a real honor to be that this race is being considered. And I hope to get your support. It's been a great organization, and you all have done great work. And yeah, so I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and formally introduce myself. My name is Kaegan Mays-Williams. As you know, I'm the daughter of Grace Williams, who came here from Trinidad, or who emigrated to America from Trinidad. And she worked a number of jobs to put food on the table. She worked at fast food restaurants. She did home health aid work. She's really done a number of jobs, and now she's a physical therapist. And it was really a very difficult thing for her to do as a working parent. And it's still too hard 40 years later. And the reason that I'm running for office, particularly in this district, is because I have been fighting for people for my entire career as a public servant. My first 10 years, I fought as a Manhattan ADA, and I worked on numerous cases where I served to protect victims of a myriad of crimes. But I also did work in the public corruption unit to hold those who held the public trust accountable. And then finally ended my time as an ADA, working in the financial frauds units, investigating large scale financial frauds. And that now presently I work at Everytown for Gun Safety, and I have done so for almost 3 years, where my job is basically to draft gun violence prevention legislation across the country. When I first started working there 2 years ago, I worked in the Northeast and the South, and now I work across 13 states in the Midwest, basically preparing other lawmakers for their testimony, letting them know other gun violence prevention solutions that might help their communities based on the data we have. And I really thought during the pandemic, as I was taking my daughter out on walks on Newkirk, on Glenwood Road, my daughter had some questions about why there were so many people lining up asking for food. She didn't understand. In fact, she wanted to get in line and get food too. And I had to explain to her at 2.5 years old that that line was not for us, that we were so fortunate to have food in our refrigerator. But I actually, when I was growing up with my mom on our own, I do remember times when we didn't have food in our refrigerator. And I had a moment where I thought to myself, now that I'm grounded by the pandemic, why am I've worked in Manhattan for 10 years. I've been flying across the country, helping other communities. What work can I do to help my own? And that's really what the genesis was for me to decide to use the experience and the talents that I have to support my own community. And that is how I decided to run for office. So that's kind of my opening statement and who I am, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
All right, if you can use Zoom's raise hand function. If you're not sure or able how to do that, just try to wave in your screen and hopefully I will see it. I'm gonna call on Sarah first.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
So we wanted to ask if you would sign our pledge to support the New York Health Act, and just about your thoughts on single payer healthcare.
Yes, I absolutely will sign the pledge to pass the New York Health Act. I participated last year when we were asking the same of the city council candidates, and helped do the work to go through and find the recordings, and just to make sure we could transcribe the part of the transcript where they made the pledge and held them accountable. And I think the single payer method is important because in order, healthcare is a human right. The idea that having healthcare is attached to your labor is ableist, and completely leaves out a huge swath of the population that, quite frankly, saved New York during the pandemic. There are a number of undocumented people who are currently excluded from getting health care, and otherwise people who are not able to work in a way that allows them to have full health care, including a lot of the people who work in the arts that live in our district, including a lot of people who work part-time because their parents and they're unable to do otherwise. And then, as I mentioned before, people who are, have disabilities that do not allow them to work in a way that will extend healthcare to them. So I do believe that healthcare is an act and that we need to pass the New York Health Act.
Thank you for that. I'm going to say next hand I saw was that of Blake Morris. So Blake, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thanks for coming to our endorsement interview meeting. I have two questions. One, I want to get back to the New York Health Act, and then I have a second question. So my first question regarding the Health Act and that you're going to sign the pledge is, do you think that the New York Health Act is sustainable? Can the state actually afford it? And if you do think so, what do you say to the people who say that we can't afford the New York Health Act? That's my first part of my question.
Okay. Well, what I will say is that New York State has one of the biggest budgets in the world. And to those who say that we can't afford it, I think the question to them is a question of their values. You know, is it the value, particularly as we continue to go through this pandemic? I know a lot of people say when the pandemic happened, I know the pandemic is still happening, though it has, the variations have kind of died down a little bit. I think it's important to have an understanding of what people's values are. And if the value is that every human being should not just have access to health care when they're sick, but also to make sure that they do not get sick. There's so many people who are not getting regular checkups and who are getting to the doctor entirely too late. And so when people say it's too expensive, I think that the examination is, what are your values and what are the things that we're spending money on that we can reinvest in other areas. So it would become a value question. But I think that was part one of a part two question. Or is there there's another one coming?
Yes, and part two is regarding the high cost of electricity in the state, and Con Ed has raised the rates for New York City and Westchester last year, and they're going to have another scheduled rate increase this coming January. And with the high cost of internet access, what would you say about what the state could do to actually reduce the electrical rate cost and the internet costs now, and should consumers get a rebate?
I absolutely think that consumers should get a rebate. Right now, the incumbent is the chair of the Energy Committee, and as you all may know, I think has a relationship with some of their utility companies that present a little bit of a conflict. And I think that where they're not a conflict, we may not be in a situation where we are so unbelievably dealing with high rates of our utility bills, electricity bills, gas. I mean, he can't do everything. And I know that he's trying to introduce some sort of a gas tax rebate now. There's a lot of questions about that legislation that's going around the country. But I absolutely do think that in a time when a lot of people have lost their jobs or are currently underemployed, there does need to be a rebate back to the people.
All right, thank you for that, Kaegan. Next, I saw Jess, and after Jess, Baruch.
David, before we go ahead, David Alexis is in the room. What are the rules regarding that?
He is allowed to hear other candidates give their answers. That's
Thank
fine.
you.
When we're going to have a more intimate discussion among all of us about what we thought about the candidates' answers, what we know about them. At that point, candidates and their staff will be asked to leave, but during the initial speech and question period, they're totally allowed to be in here. Go ahead.
Hey, hi, Kaegan. I did want to ask you a question. I was just looking over your candidate statement, and you did put in that we need not only more robust healthcare, but also mental health care. And I wanted to ask you a question about that. But That will have to wait. I'm going to ask you a question on education, seeing as that I am president of Community Education Council 22, which covers a big part of Senate District 21. On February 8th, CEC 22 unanimously passed a resolution to support legislation to protect the charter cap. This was based on legislation introduced by Senator John Liu, which would amend education law to provide New York State Board of Regents with final authority over proposed and renewed charters. I'm wondering if you support capping the number of charter schools in our city and putting them all under the jurisdiction or the purview of the regents, the Board of Regents.
Yes. Yeah, I know that, our public schools are woefully underfunded. And I think that the cap is absolutely necessary because, while I absolutely understand that charter schools, do have a place in existing, particularly in the eastern parts of our district, where some of the public schools are not as invested in and not funded in the way that some of the other public schools are invested in, that there are communities within our district that do rely on those charter schools. So I would want to focus on at least allowing those schools to exist to help the populations that they're happy that they are helping, but then using that money instead, but capping the amount of charter schools and then taking that money to reinvest in public schools.
Okay, thank you. Baruch, you're up.
As a former mid-level medical practitioner who is retired, do you feel that health care is an entitlement or a privilege? And then does the capitalist system, I am for capitalism, but to have it commodified to the extent that large bond funds and investment groups are buying into the provision directly of health care. Can we exclude them legally and just have a single payer network across the state with perhaps people being able to opt into private care if they want?
So to answer your first question, I do think that healthcare is the right. So that would be an entitlement based on using your words. I don't think that it is currently a privilege, but I do think that it is a right. It's being treated as a privilege that only a few people in the categories that I described before are able to get access to healthcare. But I will ask you to kind of repeat part of the second part of your question because I'm not quite sure that I understood it. Could you repeat that for me? Apologies.
I'm asking that now that BlackRock and other ETF funds and asset management companies are buying wholesale healthcare networks and making them run on a business care model, removes them from the traditional medical or accepted standards throughout the world. Can we, do you think that there's any legal maneuverable room to replace the standard of care that are being enforced by the financial companies?
Well, I certainly, I think that's an extremely nuanced question. I am hoping, and what I'm hearing, and please tell me if I'm not getting your question right. Are we able to build a healthcare system outside of the status quo? We're not relying on private money and private insurance. I think that's what I'm understanding from your question. And I think that is okay. All right. I just want to make sure that I'm getting that right. Right. Yeah, I mean, we are one of the only nations in the world that has the income that we have, that has not prioritized healthcare for all of our communities. So certainly we have many models which show that it is possible and that it's something that we can do. And so to that answer, yes, I think we can do it without private equity money. But I think I remember part of your other question was, should people be able to opt into private care should they want? And I do think that there is, and that said, I don't know all the legal ramifications of having a system which allows for there to be a public and private option. But I seem to think that more choice is greater. And so if people can have private health care, if they so choose, I don't see a reason to deny someone of that opportunity if they so choose. But it is quite possible there's something that I don't know that I should consider. So I will be clear on that. Healthcare is not a place where I hold the greatest amount of expertise.
I apologize if my question was too speculative or theoretical, but it does have a direct impact on the New York Healthcare Act.
I see.
Oh. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Baruch. All right, we have time for 2 more questions, and I see 4 people who want to ask a question. Marion, Billy, Solomon, and Gina. So I am going to flip 2 coins.
Can we just first ask if anybody has a question that's not healthcare related, so we can try and cover it?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. If any of these questions are healthcare related, we would ask if that's been covered a lot already. All right. Okay, so my coin flips have randomly determined. We will hear from Billy and then from Gina. I apologize to the people who did not get a chance to hear your question.
Great, cool. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us. I wanted to ask you about housing. There was a brief moment earlier in the sort of budget negotiation season this year where the governor proposed changing the law such that all municipalities across the state would be required to allow the development of accessory dwelling units, ADUs, on single family properties. The goal was to encourage new housing construction and increase housing density. And it was removed from the executive budget proposal because of fierce opposition from elected officials on Long Island in particular, although there are already many such ADUs in the city, many of which are not legal or properly regulated right now. So I wanted to ask if you would have supported that proposal, if you think that's a good idea, because I'm sure it will come up again in the near future. And then if you want to speak more broadly about how you think housing development and affordability should happen in your district and in the city, I'd be curious to hear that as well.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Billy. There are a number of single family homes in our district, as you all know, and I have spoken with many voters who are interested in having the ability to have a portion of their home that is rented out that is legal, rather than dealing with some of the terrible, like, for example, having renting out a basement that is, I think, less than 7 feet, and all those terrible situations where people drowned because they're during one of our latest hurricanes because the buildings are just not up to code. I think that a lot of single family houses deliver a lot of the affordable housing in this district and throughout the city, mainly because the people who are providing the housing are using the tenants' money in order to pay their mortgages. So I am of the belief that we should make it a little bit easier for them to do that, and make sure that the housing that they provide is regulated to protect both the tenant and the landlord. But how do I feel about housing in general? I know that obviously there are several buildings that are popping up throughout our district. There are many people being priced out of their homes. Many of you know that Ox Tavern just closed recently, and what is to replace it is supposed to be affordable housing, although We've been told later that they're only offering a few units that are actually affordable. And I do have a deep concern, and a lot of the voters that I've spoken about have a deep concern about building new buildings which are not affordable to many of the people who have lived there for generations. So that is a concern that I have. I know this is more of a city issue, but I know that Governor Hochul also spoke about wanting to amend 421A, because as we know, developers have had an opportunity to really make a lot of money without actually reinvesting in communities in the way that they had promised. So I would go further than Governor Hochul had suggested, and really try to do away with 421A. So it's kind of a broader answer about housing in general. But did you want me to focus on single family homes, or I hope that I answered your question.
You did. I mean, to the extent, if you could speak specifically, if you're familiar with the proposal that was and is no longer is the executive budget, the requirement that all municipalities allow for the development of these accessory dwelling units, if that's something you would have supported if it were in the budget and you were voting on it.
I think so. I think that if it's just like requiring people to have the ability to offer more housing in places where I think the affordable housing exists in the city, I think allowing people to have choice, as I said before, is really important. So I have to admit that I have not been in the weeds to that proposal, and I don't. I probably could learn more about it to give you a truly educated response. But from what I can understand of what you described, I would have been in favor of giving more opportunity for housing dwelling units to offer more affordable housing.
Great, thank you so
much. I will dig into it, and thank you for asking, because you've given me some homework. Thank you, Billy.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Billy. And okay, so the last question, Gina asked me to ask it for her since she doesn't have voice access. But her question was, Ms. Mays-Williams, what is your position on New York State adopting and funding universal childcare? And perhaps more importantly, how feasible do you think this is?
Yeah, that's a good question. That is something that I have done a lot of thinking about. My position is that, in New York City, it has been a great benefit to parents here to be able to have 3K and pre-K for their kids. And the idea that other, communities would like the same for themselves when childcare is constantly, the costs of childcare are always skyrocketing. I would love for other communities to be able to have that same access. I think the question about feasibility, I think about it a lot in terms of the childcare providers. And my understanding is that a lot of childcare providers have had to get other jobs because they simply weren't being paid a living wage with the system as is. And I do wonder if increasing the supply of universal childcare facilities, what that will do to the wages of the people providing the care. That is something that I've been doing a lot of thinking about. Are we able to increase supply without diminishing the benefits and the pay? But as a concept, as a policy of allowing children to have childcare, because we know that those early years are really informative, important years. I like the idea of it. And I know obviously we benefit from it in the city. My daughter is 4.5. But the feasibility question is interesting. I don't know if it's feasible. I do hope that it doesn't have to come at the expense of those providing the care.
Okay, thank you very much. And then for those who didn't get to ask a question or who may have a question later, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you or your campaign?
You can, first of all, thank you all so very much. Yeah, right on, Julio. Yeah, I guess it goes back to our values. So thank you all for letting me be here and to speak before you and answer your questions. I really appreciate it. It's kind of the first time I've been here as a as a person seeking your support rather than a member of the club. So this has been interesting and fun. And thank you for this opportunity. You can either reach me at Kaegan for New York State Senate at gmail.com, or you can reach out to my campaign manager at rebecca@kaegan.org if you have any other questions, and we'd be happy to circle back. So thank you again.